عاشره والقوم نغني تعبيره
كل الناس محمد يرفع
الراس نادينا كل الناس محمد يرفع الراس
لفينا عنا ابو محمد عالخير وعالجود معود
لفينا عنا ابو محمد الخير وعالجود معود
The Palestinian corner from Montreal, and this is our 56th episode devoted to Abraham in Canaan. Abraham, or Ibrahim, is the common patriarch of the three Abrahamic religions. In Judaism, he is the founding father of the covenant. In Christianity, he is the prototype of all believers, Jewish or Gentile. And in Islam, he is the first Muslim and the link in the chain of prophets that culminates in Muhammad. The narrative in Genesis revolves around the themes of posterity and land. Abraham, at the age of 70, was thrown in fire with his brother by the local authorities in his hometown Ur, but he survived while his brother was burned to death. After the incident, he had a dream to move out of his town Ur, south of modern Baghdad, Iraq. In the road, they stopped in Haran, Turkey, where his father fell ill, and the father suggested his marriage to his half-sister Sarah. After his father's death, he split from his brother and took his wife, Sarah, nephew, and a servant, took the road south to the land of Canaan. He arrived in Nablus of the West Bank, Palestine, and realized it was his promised land. He moved south to present-day Hebron. The Abraham history is presented in the Old Torah, or Old Testament, and Quran through religious presentations, but in reality there is no fact. It can't be definitely related to any specific time. And it is widely agreed that the patriarchal age is a late literary work that does not relate to any period in actual history. A common hypothesis among scholars is that it was composed in the early Persian period during the Babylonian late 6th century BC as a result of tension between Jews who had stayed in Judea and Samaria during the Babylonian captivity and traced their right to the land through their father Abraham, and the returning exiles who based their counterclaim on Moses and the Exodus traditions. Thank you. This is the story of Abraham in the land of Canaan. His life story, faith, and beliefs became foundations for the Jewish, Christian, and Muslim religions. He was an immigrant, a stranger in a new land. Abraham grew up in the city of Ur in Mesopotamia, ancient Iraq. He worked with his father in cuneiform writing and making sculptures and idols for kings and religious figures until the age of 70-year-old. It has been told that one day he broke the idols in his father's shop and was punished by the authority. There is a story in Genesis, and the Quran relates that he was thrown in a fire to be burned, but he was delivered safe. His elder brother Haran died in the fire, leaving behind him his son Lot and daughter Milcah. While Abraham, in his grief, he had a dream to go west and immigrate to a new land where the Spirit will guide him. Terah, the father of Abraham, has 2 children left, younger Abraham and older Nahor, and a daughter, Sarah. Terah closed his cuneiform writing and idol-making shop and moved with the rest of the family, including servant Eliezer. He, with his family, arrived in Haran, now a town in Turkey. At Haran, the father fell ill, but arranged the marriage of Abraham to his half-sister Sarah and Nahor to his niece Milcah. The 2 brothers, Abraham and Nahor, split 2 weeks after the death of their father. Abraham's older brother Nahor and his wife Milcah stayed in Haran. Abraham, his wife Sarah, nephew Lot, and counselor Eliezer of Damascus walked towards the land of Canaan through the southern Mediterranean Sea Road. The land of Canaan had no checkpoints at crossing roads with Syria, Europe, and Mesopotamia. It was a land of free trade and worship. It consisted of confederations of city-states where trade and free market. To Abraham, it was the land of peace. The land of Canaan was an open country for vegetations, grass, and groves. The Bible recorded his first arrival in details to the town of Shechem. Old Nablus is located in a valley between 2 mountains at a major caravan crossroad. Shechem was a known caravan and a market center where wheat and olive are grown and sheep and goats are grazed. Abraham traveled through the valley as a stranger, a humble nomad who led his flock through the populated valley. To the Canaanites, Abraham was not the first Arab or passing through the roads. Abraham reached Bethel, a suburb town with numerous temples and sculptures on a mountain top. An oak tree, Ilan Morah Shechem, was the first stop for Abraham and where he camped. Abraham had a dream that night, and God told him that he entered the promised land. God appeared again to Abraham and told him of a covenant. Genesis. God said to Abraham, I am the Almighty God. Walk before me and be perfect, and I will make my covenant between me and you, and will multiply exceedingly. And Abraham fell on his face, and God told him, Hold my covenants with me, and you shall be a father of many nations. When the market activities slowed down in Shechem, Abraham moved his caravan southward. His nomadic camp was similar to other Bedouin sites, which consist of 2 or more tents. Sarah's tent was a large house with a division between the private section and a common sitting area. Abraham shared his sitting area and food with Lot and Eliezer and guests who passed by. His major stop was in an open grazing hilly area near Machpelah Caves. At the site, Abraham performed a circumcision to himself as a fulfillment to the covenant according to his vision. He was recuperating outside his tent when he extended his invitations to 3 passerbys. While chasing a calf to serve roasted to them and worship God, he stumbled into the graves of what he believed to be of Adam and Eve. Candles were lit around them, and Abraham detected a special fragrance. After the preparation of dinner and talking and praising God, one of the 3 guests announced his thanks and in honor of a son to Abraham and Sarah. Genesis. Then Abraham fell upon his face and laughed, and said in his heart, Shall a child be born into him that is 100 years old, and shall Sarah that is 90 years old bear? Sarah reacted similarly. When the mysterious visitor informed her of imminent motherhood, and Sarah laughed within herself, saying, After I was waxed old, shall I have pleasure, my lord Abraham being old also. The 3 men continued in their way, while Abraham believed them to be angelic visitors. Abraham became preoccupied with his dreams and his visions and companionships with God, that he did not realize that his caravan was deep in the Negev desert. The lure of Egypt and rich soil of its Nile encouraged Abraham and his caravan to continue southward. Before reaching an Egyptian border crossing, he recognized the beauty of his wife, Sarah, and her flashing image that he ordered her to hide in a box carried by a camel. When an officer opened a box in Abraham's luggage, a fair woman came out of it. The officers questioned why a woman was smuggled in a box when no travel documents were required unless a secret was conceived. The crossing officers decided to send the mysterious woman, her brother, and their caravan to the pharaoh of the land to decide on the case. At the pharaoh's palace, Abraham confirmed that the woman was his sister and she traveled with him. The pharaoh suppressed the idea of sending them back to Canaan. Rather, he offered to marry the smuggled fair woman from her brother. The pharaoh took Sarah into his house and enriched Abraham, the brother, with herds, land, and servants. Abraham became the brother-in-law of the pharaoh of the land. Abraham developed a liking to a young princess, Hagar, and the pharaoh approved of Hagar's being with Sarah and her brother Abraham. Pharaoh consequently recognized the truth of the matter, Genesis. And Pharaoh called Abraham and said, "What is that you have done unto me? Why didn't you tell me that she was your wife? And why said she is my sister, so I might not have taken her to be my wife? Now therefore, behold your wife, take her and go away." And Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and they sent him away, Hagar and Sarah and all that he had. And Abraham was very rich in cattle, in silver, and in gold. Abraham by then became at odds with his nephew Lot. The land was not able to bear them. The herdsmen of Abraham and Lot and the Canaanites were crowding the area. When the herdsmen quarreled constantly, Abraham told Lot to separate thyself. And Lot led his cattle toward Sodom and Gomorrah, near the Dead Sea, and into the Jordan flow. Abraham became in peace again, and it came to pass a war erupted between a king from Mesopotamia and the king of Sodom, and the city was occupied and burned, and Lot and his 2 daughters were taken prisoners as others. Precious items and goods were also confiscated. Abraham heard from an escaped resident of Sodom of the war and captivity of Lot and his 2 daughters. He joined a confederation of Canaanites and Eshcol and Amorites to attack the prisoners transporting caravan. Abraham joined in arming and training 318 men and pursued the transport caravan and attacked it just before Damascus. The guards fled while all prisoners were free. In his way back near Jerusalem, King Melchizedek and the king of Sodom went out to meet Abraham's caravan and blessed the fighters. Lot continued to live near the Jordan River with his 2 daughters. Meanwhile, Abraham moved his Bedouin camp southward to the Negev desert. Abraham pitched his tents near shaded trees as other Bedouin communities. He also built an altar as a place for killing animals and worship. Altar in Hebrew and Arabic, Mizbah, a place to kill animals, was constructed of stones, earth, and wood. Abraham constructed open-air altars at Morah, Bethel, and Mamre and the vicinities of Hebron, and atop Mount Moriah, and according to Prophet Muhammad, in Mecca. Such altars were a place of killing animals and a place of gatherings and worship. Abraham projected an image of a wise old man, a prophet, and a believer in one God. Abraham traveled through the Beersheba in the middle of the Negev desert and toward the city of Gerar, a commercial center near the Mediterranean Sea at the end of the caravan route coming from Arabia, and on the caravan route at the crossroad that connected Asia and Europe with Africa. He took the same old caravan route that came from Arabia through the Negev, stopping near its water sources to rest, feed his herd, and attend open markets in the little towns. The biblical narrator told us that Abraham had married Hagar when he was 85 years old, 10 years after his arrival to the land of Canaan. Abraham shared the same tent with the 2 wives and must have caused jealousy and bickering among the 2 wives from the beginning. Soon enough, Hagar became pregnant, which caused envy and anxiety among the 2 nomad women. Hagar was a young fair woman, while Sarah also was a fair lady to look upon, and who kept her age hidden under a charm face and a deep penetrating Bedouin looks. Sarah was the favorite woman in the Bible, while Hajar was the favorite lady in the Quran. Sarah had claimed to have given Hajar, her maid slave, to Abraham as a wife. Bedouin traditions obliged the first wife to accept the second wife. Once Hajar conceived, according to Genesis, Hajar lowered her opinion of Sarah, and Sarah began to treat her harshly. Hajar was not able to take the harsh treatment from Sarah, and she ran away to the desert of Negev and was met by an angel who persuaded her to go back. The angel spoke to Hajar. Genesis: Behold, you are with a child, and shall bear a son. You shall call his name Ismail, because the Lord has given heed to your afflictions. Abraham came back from his trip to search for Hajar and to be met with the promise of a son from an angel. Sarah was not so impressed by the story of the male angel. When Abraham was 86 years old, Hajar gave birth to Ismail. The two women continued to fight over daily chores and the baby and their potential inheritance of Abraham, who accumulated wealth and herds. One day Sarah had it with Hajar and told Abraham, Genesis: Cast out the slave woman with her son. Ishmael was a baby, could be carried on the waist and shoulder. Casting Hajar and her son away in the middle of the desert would be their death. Abraham chose Sarah and let go of his second wife and her son. Next day, Abraham called Hajar and the son Ishmael to a small caravan. Abraham took the caravan route east. The camel route to Arabia was a major commercial caravan route to transport spices and silks, ivory and incense, frankincense and myrrh, and medicinal herbs, commodities as prized in antiquities as are perfumes, cosmetics and drugs. Abraham traveled through cultivated land, deserts and mountains until he reached a barren valley next to an old sacred Bedouin place of worship, the Kaaba. Abraham helped his wife Hajar and his child Ismail to dismount, and then left them with a small amount of food and a water in a skin bag made from a small animal. He turned around with his camel and walked away. His wife hurried after him, but he did not stop. Abraham must have been troubled, and according to the Quran prayed the Quran, Lord, I have made some of my offspring to dwell in a valley with no cultivations by your sacred house, in order that they may offer prayer perfectly. So fill some hearts among men with love toward them, and provide them with fruits, so they may give thanks. When the water in the skin bag was gone, Hajar cast the child under one of the bushes. Then Hajar carried Ismail on her shoulder in the desert. Genesis related that God had told Hajar to lift up the lad and hold him in your hand. Hajar became thirsty, and her child cried. She left Ismail under a bush and ran towards a mirage of water near Mount Safa to the right. She stood on top of the mount, looking at the valley, seeking help, but there was nobody. She called God 3 times and turned to see a mirage of water near Mount Marwa on the other side of her son. She descended from Safa through the valley, but there was no water. She walked towards the top of Marwa Mount and called on God for help 3 times. She repeated going between the 2 mounts, Safa and Marwa, 7 times. Seeking help from God and walking and running between the 2 mounts has become a Muslim ritual performing the annual Hajj in Mecca. Hajar reached Mount Marwa for the last time, and after calling the name of God 3 times, she heard a voice, and she asked herself to be quiet. The man angel kicked a rock by his heel until water flowed from the ground. She ran toward her son and drank to stop her thirst and filled up her water skin while Ishmael giggled with the flow of water. Prophet Muhammad related the story in his hadith that then she drank water and suckled her child. The angel said to her, don't be afraid of being neglected She stayed near the well of Zamzam until some people from the tribe of Jurhum passed by her and her child through the way to Kaaba. They landed in the lower part of Mecca, where they saw a bird that had the habit of flying around water and not leaving it. They said, "The bird must be flying around water, though we know that there is no water in the valley." They sent one messengers who discovered the source of water and returned to inform them. So they all came toward the water. Ismail's mother was sitting nearby. Hajar's story ended after that event in one version. The well of Zamzam, however, continued to supply Mecca city with water, and during the pilgrimage Hajj season took millions of pilgrims. Abraham was aware of the safety of Hajar and Ismail, leaving them near a place of worship. He returned to Beersheba, traveling back the camel route, stopping at its major commercial stops, trading and grazing his animals. In Beersheba, he collected his tribe and caravan and marched west to Gerar, the major Canaanite city near the sea and major route between Europe and Africa and Asia. Gerar was more likely on top of Tel el-Jul Mount or ancient Gaza. The land presented a good grazing area in Wadi, Gaza and Issalga and other valleys, and close to commercial areas. Beersheba was part of the southern region of Gerar, whose king was named Abi Malik, in Arabic Abu Malik. Abraham and his caravan stopped near water well and a plenty of grazing area for his herd. Owners of the land and well complained about the overuse of the well and land. Bedouins and Arabs are hospitable for the first 3 days, but later a guest is requested to depart or settle separately. The desert climate brings imbalance between the demand for water and its supply, the supply being too scarce to meet the demand. When the complaint reached King Abi Malik of Gerar about the tribe of Yahuwah and its overuse of water source and grazing land, he arrived at the disputed well. Abraham and Sarah came out of their tent to meet the king of Gerar. When the king asked about Abraham's companion, he replied that it was his sister, Sarah. Instead of addressing the complaint about the crowding of the water well, the king proposed to marry Sarah, the sister of Abraham. Abraham accepted and she accepted. Abraham enjoyed the patronage of the king of Gerar as his brother-in-law. As it seems, Sarah lived at the king's palace for some time. Abraham took another trip back toward the east. Abraham led his caravan to the Hijaz desert and located the valley, which became populated with Bedouins around water well. The father recognized his son Ishmael behind the Zamzam well, mending his arrows. Abraham more likely visited the site several times earlier, and during one visit, according to the Quran, he told his son, "Lord has ordered me to build a house for him." Ismail said, "Obey your Lord." Abraham said, "Allah has also ordered me that you should help me." Therein Ishmael said, "Then I will do so." So both of them rose, and Abraham shared building the Kaaba, while Ishmael went on handing him the stones. When the building became high, and Abraham could no longer lift the stones to such a high position, he stood over the stones of El-Maqam, and Ismail carried on handing him the stones. The Muslim pilgrims circulate the Kaaba 7 times and then finish with a prayer at Ibrahim El-Maqam's corner, where it is said that they have stood and prayed. Abraham left the Hijaz back to the Negev. Arab historians claim that Abraham traveled all the way to Yemen and the Gulf area, followed the caravan route. Abraham returned to Gerar to see his sister Sarah, then married to the king of Gerar region. He was seen praying near caravan and near water well. The king must have heard of Abraham's prophecy, and Sarah must have confessed to him, while herdsmen gossiped that their king married the wife of an old holy man. The Bible relates that Abi Malik had a dream where Sarah was the wife of the old man and also his sister. The king learned the truth next day and called Sarah and Abraham. Abi Malik restored Sarah to her husband Abraham, and gave Abraham gifts of livestock and servants. He also gave him 1,000 pieces of silver to reprove Sarah by covering the eyes, according to Genesis. Later, the old dispute over the well of water flared again. The Bible stated that Abimelech's men ordered Abraham and his tribe to move away from the well. King Abimelech interfered again, advising Abraham to move to Beersheba, where a well is recently dug and it has less people to compete with. The king must have known that Sarah was pregnant. At Beersheba, Abimelech requested that Abraham swears an oath of allegiance toward the king and his family, to which Abraham agreed. Abraham slaughtered 7 goats to host the king Abimelech and his chief captain Phicol, and celebrated the occasions. Abraham planted tamarisk for the occasion. Isaac was soon born immediately after this event, and although the Bible recorded that there was no sexual relationship between Sarah and Abimelech, the implications easily read into the text. In this theory, Isaac is hence the result of the union between Abimelech and Sarah. However, religions as well as natural phenomena could have resulted in the pregnancy. A popular saying among Palestinians, as it was among Canaanites, that jealousy could make a woman pregnant. Abraham traveled back to the Hijaz after the birth of Isaac. No doubt there was some tension between Ismail and Abraham, where the father detected disrespect from his son. After a dream, Abraham said Ismail, according to the Quran, "Son, I have seen in a dream that I am to sacrifice you. Now see what your opinion is." He replied, "My father, do what you have been told. God willing, you will find me patience." When both had surrendered and Abraham had laid his son Ismail down on his forehead, we called to him, "Abraham, you have already fulfilled your dream. Peace is upon Abraham." Such an act of Abraham sacrificing his son became a major ritual of performing the Hajj in Mecca. The festival of sacrifice is a major component of the pilgrimage, the Hajj. When Abraham and his son Ismail were on their way to the place of sacrifice, the Islamic tradition says that the devil, in the shape of a Bedouin, came and tried to dissuade them from what they were about to do, and they drove him away by throwing stones. The 3 places where this is said to have happened are nowadays marked with columns that are symbolically stoned by the pilgrims as an expression for the uninterrupted struggle against one's own bad inclinations. The Islamic Hajj ends with an animal sacrifice over Mount Arafah, a resemblance of the sacrifice of Abraham of his son Ismail. God told Abraham in a dream, according to the Quran, "I am going to make you a model, imam for humankind." Abraham asked, "And what about my descendants?" God said, "My covenant does not include the unjust ones among them." When Isaac reached 2 years old and was ready for being weaned, Abraham held a great feast inviting Abimelech and other dignitaries. Abraham became very rich and highly respected in the Negev by this time. Sarah was happy, showing her young child, and offered to breastfeed other babies. She was the mother, no doubt, of Isaac. Another story told that Sarah was not so impressed by the presence of Hagar and her son Ismail, and again she asked Abraham to cast away that woman and her child. The story goes that Sarah insisted that Hagar and her child should be expelled and disinherited. Sarah said that the son of Hagar and her son were not the same sort of human beings, and that they did not belong to the same household. Jewish identity has been acquired through Sarah, not Abraham. Hagar and her son Ismail took the caravan back to Mecca, and again the story of Hagar, according to this version, ended. This is the story of Abraham in the land of Canaan. His life story, faith and beliefs became foundations for the Jewish, Christian and Muslim religions. Abraham continued to live in Beersheba, making trade trips on the caravan routes. He no doubt felt the need and respect from his two children. He must have felt the respect from his two sons who were already talking about inheriting his wealth. Again Abraham had a dream, and God told him, "Take now thy son, the only son Isaac, whom you love, and get him into the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will tell you." According to the story, Ishmael and the servant accompanied Abraham and Isaac. When they got to Jerusalem, close to the spot where the sacrifice was to take place, Abraham told them, and Abraham said to his young men, "Abide you here with the donkey, and I and the land will go yonder and worship and come to you again." When Abraham got to the mountain and had set up the altar to sacrifice Isaac, Isaac asked where was the animal they were to use. It was then that Abraham told Isaac for the first time that he was to be the offering. One story said that Isaac asked his father to bind him so that he wouldn't jerk or flinch under his knife. Just as Abraham was about to swing his knife down, someone held his hand and offered him a ram instead. The Bible reported that God stopped him and said, "Lay not the hand upon the land, neither do thou any things unto him, for now I know that thou fearest God, seeing thou hast not withheld the son, the only son, for me." Abraham wanted trust and faith from his younger son. The action of Abraham to kill his son Isaac traveled fast all the way to Beersheba. Sarah received the news in distress. She took off instantly towards the land of Moriah, Jerusalem, running through dusty roads, asking about her husband Abraham and son Isaac, and if her son was still alive. More likely, Isaac was 37-year-old and Sarah was 127-year-old. She ran in agony over her only child and fear of being killed. She reached the camp around at Machpelah cave in Hebron and collapsed. She was not able to go any further and died alone in distress and dehydration. It is said that Abraham and Isaac returned to Beersheba and then followed the path of Sarah to Hebron, where they found her dead. Abraham carried his wife's dead body and looked for a burial place. He went to the Canaanites who owned the cave of Machpelah to purchase the land from them, and Sarah was buried in the cave. Eventually, Sarah's tomb was expanded and used as a family burial place. Abraham and his son Isaac went back to Beersheba, missing Sarah, but soon enough Abraham arranged to marry a Bedouin woman called Keturah and had 6 sons from her. He also sent his steward Eleazar and obtained a wife for Isaac. He made a trip to his son Ishmael, where he got married to Sabah from the tribe of Ishmael. Abraham lived to be 175-year-old. He became old, though his legacy had begun during his life. Biblical narratives represented Abraham as a wealthy and supremely virtuous man. Both the Bible and the Quran recorded that righteousness comes by faith, not by relationship. There is no reference to the story of patriarch Abraham outside the biblical and Quranic accounts. Abraham had great impact on his children and companions by implementing prayers to thank God and as a form of meditations to take tensions and worries and anxiety out of his behavior and life. Such a prayer became the foundation of the 3 religions that followed his lifestyle. Muslim included a phrase in their 5-time prayer a day to bless Abraham and his descendants. A prayer is very effective at all occasions, he thought. Abraham's descendants were his major worry, for he tried to keep respect from his children, but circumstances cast his children away from him. Although material inheritance was a major concern for Sarah and Hajar, his faraway descendants went in a conflict over his dreams of inheritance and disinheriting others. Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and the Baha'i faith are referred to as the Abrahamic religions or descendants of the sons of Abraham. Abraham has played a major role in their holy books and beliefs. In the Hebrew Bible and the Quran, Abraham is described as a patriarch blessed by God. His beliefs are a model of faith in God to offer his son Isaac according to Christians and Jews, or his son Ismail according to the Muslims, to be tested for his beliefs. Such a heroic act can be performed by a stubborn nomad. Religious thoughts, however, glorified his action as a test of faith. He was treated as the first patriarch and prophet. He was the shadow and manifestation of God on earth, later of course not during his lifetime. Abraham had no major dispute with the Canaanites, although had serious conflicts in Mesopotamia, Iraq, and Egypt of the pharaohs. No doubt, he coexisted with the Canaanites and accepted the land of Canaan as his land and of his descendants. He found more rooms for his tribes to flourish in Beersheba. Canaan was the promised land for Abraham, where he experienced peace with the people and recognitions from the system of government. Abraham was an ideal immigrant and fit perfectly in the environment of the land of Canaan and its caravans. Abraham died of old age in Beersheba at the age of 175-year-old. He was buried by his children and descendants in the same Machpelah cave.
يا غيرة من رجال العز والأمجاد للضيف والسيف لكن جاءها الصياد. يا حين طار رجالي في طلقة الاحتلال. يا حين طار رجالي صلوا سيوف القتال واحموها شدوا الرحال إلى بئر السبع شدوها إلى عروس البوادي والنقب لاقوها شدوها الرحال إلى بئر السبع شدوها إلى عروس البوادي والنقب لاقوها